Hey, good morning and welcome to Tuesday, October 11th, 2022 Board of Supervisors. At this time, we'll call the order for closed session. If the clerk could please read out the closed session agenda items.
Closed session agenda for today, October 11th, 2022. Item 1, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel, re-existing litigation, Calaveras Planning Coalition versus Calaveras County Board of Supervisors et al., Calaveras County Superior Court Case number 19CV44471. Item 2, pursuant to Government Code 54957.6, conference with county designated labor negotiators Nick Marvin and Corey Allen regarding the following employee organization, Service Employees International Union, SEIU, Local 2015. Item 3, pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D2, conference with legal counsel, re-anticipated litigation, one case, significant exposure to litigation.
With that, is there any public comment related to the closed session agenda items?
There is no online public comment.
Okay, and I'm not seeing any in the room. With that, okay.
Hello. Good morning. I'm here for all the providers for IHSS. We need a contract and we need to be a little bit generous because the gas is driving us nuts. I am a provider. My name is Lupe Smith. I take care of my husband, my dad, and my son. My son's special ed, my dad's got dementia, my husband's dying of cancer. And we're barely making it. Sometimes we go to the grocery store, we barely have enough. The way the gas is going up is crazy. Another thing, we need more providers in this county. There's so many people who are getting ill. We're getting in the age that we're gonna need providers. You know, I can say for myself, I'm not that young, and there's hardly no providers around here. There's many, many people who want to be providers. We just need to establish those providers. More of them around here because we're all gonna need one. And I really thank you. I'm humbly just asking you guys to please be generous with the contract. We really need it. Thank you. You have a nice day, okay?
Thank you. Are there any other public comment on the closed session agenda items? Okay, seeing none in the room, none online, correct?
Correct. No, not online.
We will convene into closed session and be back at 9 o'clock. Thank you.
Hey, Hanny, I'm getting ready to go into a board meeting, but it's real quick. Awesome.
Real quick,
Okay,
so I'm getting ready to send this email to Paul and Jennifer.
okay. I started doing it. Has for me to give a does not submit the requirement. Oh. mm. Yeah, that's nice for you to give them a heads up. Yeah, totally. Yeah, we're simpatico with them. I want to make sure. Thank you for doing that, Hanny.
I'll see you on it.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Mark.
herself off camera.
Muffy, can you please turn your camera back on? There she is.
Hi, Muffy. This is Cindy Nobles, your team interpreter for today. Hi, hun. Did you get my phone number from Eaton? Okay, I'm going to give you my number because that's the only way we're going to be able to switch. Okay, so text me yours and that's our way of communication. Okay, so I'll wait for your text. Thank you, darling. We're going to go off now. Bye.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, good morning and welcome to the Tuesday, October 11th, 2022 Board of Supervisors meeting. If you could please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Earlier this morning, we went into closed session, and at this time after the regular meeting, we will be going back into closed session. So there is nothing to report out at this time. Next, we have staff announcements, and I believe Ms. Medina, is she in the room or online?
Yes.
Online. Okay.
Good morning, Madam Chair, honorable board members. Thank you very much for letting me present today. Lisa Medina, Environmental Management Agency Administrator. This past weekend, we had a very successful rabies and microchip clinic. The focus crew, volunteers, Dr. Kathy and Steve Gatlin, administered over 150 rabies vaccines and 90 microchips. This was the last free clinic for 2022. 2022 was a huge success with a total of 960 rabies vaccines and 385 microchips given to our Calaveras animals. Our community stands together in the protection of our animals and our humans against this incurable disease. We want to thank Drs. Kathy and Steve Gatlin, Dr. Ginny Ringett, Focus members, Dr. Mike Hayes and Dr. Sasha Greenlee for donating their precious time to help protect our animals and the public health of our Calaveras community. We are looking forward to 2023. Let's work together, Calaveras, to ensure all of our animals are vaccinated. In September, our dog volunteers gave 449 hours with an average of 18 dogs to take out for their daily walks. In September, our cat volunteers gave 96.5 hours of their time to take care of our kitties. We are always looking for volunteers, not only for our pups, but for our kitties too. If you would like to become a volunteer, please visit our Animal Services website, or you can call our Animal Services crew at 209-754-6509. We would love to have you join our animal service team. In September, we had 18 dogs adopted from our shelter. We are at capacity as of yesterday, and we encourage our community to look at our adorable, precious fur babies we have posted on our Facebook for adoption. You can also see our adoptables on Calaveras Public Access TV. Currently up for adoption are Misty, Gypsy, Dusty, Daisy, Amber, Phoebe, Schaefer, and Bo. Thank you very much, Calaveras community. Have a great day.
Thank you, Lisa. Next, I believe we have the sheriff. Good morning.
Good morning. Again, good morning, Chair Supervisor, honorable board members, CAO Pedro, and County Council. How's everybody doing this morning? Smiling, that's good. I want to give you a little briefing about a critical incident that we had on Sunday, October 9th. It started about 2 a.m. in the morning. Sheriff's dispatch received a 911 call of a person shooting in an unsafe manner in a residential area of Jenny Lynn. A perimeter was established to ensure public safety. Calaveras SWAT, Tuolumne SWAT, and CHP responded to the location to assist with the investigation. During the investigation, there was an officer-involved shooting. Suspect, unfortunately, was pronounced deceased at the scene from a gunshot wound. There's a multi-agency officer-involved shooting protocol investigation that's being conducted at this time. And to maintain the integrity of the ongoing investigation, there's no further information at this time. We'll probably be releasing a little bit more this afternoon. I would like to publicly thank the following people for their role in this incident because it was a very large incident. We didn't finish up the scene till probably about 5 or 6 o'clock yesterday. So it was a long-term thing. I want to thank Tuolumne Sheriff's SWAT team and the Tuolumne Sheriff's Office as general for the amount of people that they sent over. Calaveras District Attorney's Office and DAU for allowing their folks to come out and assist us with the long hours. I know I was there for 20 hours the first day, and their DA investigator was there with us the whole time. As the day progressed and we were starting to run into daylight coming into short term, John and Cameron Bardwell at OES found us generators, lights through Chris Edgerly at the HHS. So they supplied. So just so you know, you're going to see a light tower on my budget next year. So I don't have to borrow one because we ended up, Chief Dickinson standing here, sitting back here behind us, was able to secure a light tower from Ione Fire Department. And they brought that over, and it was invaluable for what we had going on because we were there quite through the evening. OES and Calaveras Dispatch for the Everbridge that they sent out to let people know to shelter in place. It was a little convolved. I know the information cut all the way up into Murphy's, but that's something that we're working on with Cal OES. But they did a great job of getting that information out. Animal Services, they played a role in what we had going on out there, so I want to thank Animal Services. Again, Calco Fire for everything that they did, the use of their station. They allowed Dick Brown to come down and talk to our folks after the fact. Very helpful. He's their chaplain. Thank you. Drawing a blank. ALA for their role in standing by at the Jenny Lynn Firehouse for hours and hours and hours while we tried to resolve this situation. Chief Don, what I call AKA Grandpa Don Young from San Andreas Fire, he actually reached out and got us some lights for what we needed also. CHP's Mate Crime Scene team and their officers that were on perimeter, the road closures that we had down there, and their sergeant, Jan Hannum, was phenomenal in their coordination and cooperation with the sheriff's office. The DOJ, their crime scene investigation team that came out and assisted us. And your favorite, Swanee, our jail staff, the inmates that helped put together food for all the people that were out there, drinks and water, ice chests and everything. So everything that they did also. So I just want to give a big shout out. It was a very big team effort. And I just want to highlight how well this county works with all the departments. So very much a big thank you to everyone. So it was a good process. Unfortunate, but it was a good process. So any questions on any of that?
Just thank you, Sheriff.
Absolutely.
For what you do along with everyone else.
Yeah. On a lighter note, as we all know, Under Sheriff Macedo has retired. He retired on Friday, October 7th, and I have promoted Rochelle Whiting for Under Sheriff as of Saturday, October 8th. Turn the mic over to her and let you grill her.
Thank you. That was an interesting day 2 on the job. I've worked with most of you for many years, so I'm really looking forward to continuing that working relationship. I just want to add on to what the sheriff said, that numerous law enforcement officers this weekend showed extreme acts of bravery and self-sacrifice at our agency and our cooperating agencies. So we appreciate that and all the support that we got. And when he said he was there for 20 hours, no joke, our department is led by example. And we're really proud of that. I know you guys get a lot of updates from department heads and staff on projects, but on behalf of the staff, it's really good when you have such support from the top down, from you as board members and from our sheriff himself. And he's not going to ask us to do anything he's not willing to do himself. So he was there just as long as the rest of us. So we appreciate it, and we'll have more information forthcoming in the next couple of days that'll answer, I'm sure, a lot of questions that people have about the incident. Thank you.
Hold on, you're not done. I'm gonna turn it over to wait, Mike. Marita, Mike.
Very well on you.
Thank you.
I want everybody to understand that Rochelle is what, when I was in car sales, believe it or not, yes, I sold cars. There was a, what we used to call a hat trick. And basically a hat trick was if you sold a car, there were at least three cars in one day. Well, not only is Under Sheriff Whiting our first undersheriff female in the county, she was also our first lieutenant and our first captain. So she has completed the hat trick.
You have
She gave Jim a peace pipe.
congratulations.
Congratulations. Yeah,
Congratulations.
congratulations, Jill.
Sure, thank you for wearing pink.
You know, I support you 100%, Rita, because you support me 110%.
Except I've got to find out who's gonna get this. Which one of my colleagues are gonna look at your budget next year?
Well, they all seem to get it hard. We'll start working out right. Guys, have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other staff announcements? I'm not seeing any in the room. Are there any online?
No,
No.
they're not online.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, we have recognition and acknowledgement. If the clerk could read out item number 4.
Item 4, Proclamation, Health and Human Services Agency proclaim October 2022 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month in Calaveras County.
And I'll turn it over to Gay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was selected to read the proclamation based on the fact that it was either me or Marita. We both have the most pink on. That I'm sitting next to the chair, so she just handed it to me. But I'm honored to do it. Believe me, I am absolutely honored. That's why I wore the shirt. So to proclaim October 2022 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month in Calaveras County. Whereas breast cancer is the second most common cancer in women. And whereas about 1 in 8 women born today in the United States will develop breast cancer at some point in their lifetime. And whereas early detection and treatment of breast cancer allows most women to live long and healthy lives. And whereas mammography is the best way to find breast cancer early. And whereas public awareness and early detection can increase the number of women who survive breast cancer. So we have a whole room full of people. Would you like to come up and have some comments? Come on up.
Good morning. My name is Colleen Rodriguez, and myself and my colleagues here are from Calaveras Public Health. And we're also joined by our partners, our fantastic partners from Mark Twain Medical Center back there. You'll hear from them in just a second. We wanted to take the opportunity to tell you that we really appreciate this proclamation of October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month here in Calaveras. Breast cancer doesn't discriminate at all. So we really encourage all women in the county to get regular screenings and speak to their primary care provider. We also know that going through breast cancer or knowing someone that has gone through breast cancer, it really has an impact on folks. And we want everyone to know that public health in the county, we are here to support you. And We are always looking for ways to offer support to folks. And at this time, I think I want to offer, Mr. Doug Archer to come up and talk about an exciting community opportunity that's upcoming.
Good morning. I've been here in quite a while. Not Zoom.
Good to see you, Doug.
It's also nice to talk about something that we can actually get our hands around, which is breast cancer. So we're excited to be able to offer a lot of the state-of-the-art detection services that you might find in the bigger cities, 3D mammography and those sorts of things. We're also hosting an event October 21st. I guess that would be a week from this Friday, where we're going to do a little tribute to those that have suffered from breast cancer, celebrate those that have survived breast cancer, and just recognize the challenges that it brings, and also the support that our county can provide people that are battling such a really tough disease like breast cancer. I brought somebody with me who knows a lot more about it than I do. So I wanted to introduce Chris Stevenson. He's one of our staff at the Cancer Center. Chris.
Welcome, Chris.
Hi, everybody. We have a beautiful little cancer center. It's right there next to the hospital in one of the professional buildings, and everyone should know it exists, but please, if you can, don't come see us. But also, we're there to support and treat women with breast cancer, but it's important to know two things: that the easiest way to detect breast cancer is through a mammogram, and we have beautiful facilities for that for you. But also that men can get breast cancer as well. Yes, it's rare, but it does happen. So men, if you find any kind of lump or swelling or pain or tenderness in that breast area, see your physician and get it checked out. So that's it. Thank you for the proclamation and this awareness of breast cancer in 2022. Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, they look good supporting behind there, so.
Is there
So-
any online? Sorry.
There's no online public
Okay.
comment.
Is there any other public comment in the room? Rich, come on up. Good morning, Captain.
Good morning. I'm Stan. First, I do acknowledge breast cancer. I just have this uniform on, so I will get my ribbon on me. And I will say, I completely understand, because most of you know I have cancer, and my son just found out he had cancer. So it is dear to my heart. I promise I will have my ribbon on. I have not been around for about 4 weeks. I've been very sick with something else. But what I wanted to stand before you today is to acknowledge a very unfortunate event that happened on Sunday. I've lived in this community for 30 years. I have 2 kids and 5 grandkids that live here. I came from the Bay Area. I worked 32 years in Fremont Fire. I was part of the Urban Search and Rescue Team 128. All over the nation we went. And I've seen anything and everything. And as a community member and the fire chief here for our community down there, my hat is off to the sheriff for the professionalism they showed that day, the evacuees that had to come to our firehouse, and all the other law enforcement officers for a very difficult day. I'm very proud to be part of this community and thank all of you for supporting the sheriff and his endeavor to protect our community. So
Thank you, Rich. Thank you. All right, any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. I'm open for a motion.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any other comments?
I just want to express my gratitude to public health and our partnership with the hospital and the healthcare district. I'm really proud of what you guys are doing. And Doug, you've been a great partner with us for the last couple of years as we get into COVID. Good to see you in the chambers. And public health, thank you so much for your outreach.
Any
It's just
throughout our lives, the numbers speak for themselves. We all know someone or are close to someone that's been through this and worked through it. And it's, happens far too often. And we appreciate all the good work you do to take care of the people as they're going through this hardship. Thank you.
Any other? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. So therefore be it resolved that the Calaveras Board of Supervisors proclaim October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month in Calaveras County. It's been passed and adopted by the Board of Supervisors, County of Calaveras, State of California, on this 11th day of October 2022. And can all of you come up here so we can get a picture?
Next camera, hold on. Perfect, thank you.
Oh. One more.
Yeah, I switch over.
It's okay. I wasn't showing that.
I'm horrible. It happens all the time to me. Just.
Good? Okay. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Next, we'll move on to the general public comment. This is for any item of interest to the public that's within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas. It may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it's determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is concluded before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comment to be heard. So at this time, I'm going to divert to Zoom to make sure we don't have any Zoom public comments.
There are no online public comments.
Okay, I'll move it to the room. Are there any public comment for any items not on the agendas? And a reminder, please be mindful of the green, yellow, and red lights. Anyone?
Everyone, good morning.
Good morning.
For opening this up. It's like being back in the living. I was going to quickly start with how much I appreciate our Calaveras County road crew. Once again, I came across them. Nice as can be, doing a phenomenal job as always preparing for the winter. And I really want to put that out there. I don't think they get thanked enough. But then I realized how blessed we are as Calaveras County to have Rick as our sheriff. Because not only does he protect us, he also respects the Constitution. And there sadly in California is a lack of some sheriffs that don't stand up for the Constitution, and Rick does. So for that, I am grateful. Last week, I gave to you all, I took to your office, email, regarding elections. There is so much proof of fraud within the elections. I'm so sorry to say it started in Silicon Valley decades ago. So California, once again, has led the way. The proof is there. And so I would highly recommend checking out Dr. Douglas Frank. I've listened to him live 3 times. The man's proof is irrefutable. And this is done electronically behind the backs of those that in their hearts are trying to protect the election system. They feel like they're doing everything right. This is being done in the dark. I don't think most of them even know. I would hope they don't. Seth Keschel, who has also shown electronically. Now, we also have proof of fake voters, people that have risen from the grave. Apparently, the propositions were just that powerful that they had to do that to vote. So the proof is out there, and I would hope as elected officials that you would look into that, because you are our vanguard, are you not? Now, we voted our elected officials in to represent us, and sadly, over these some years, we've seen them rule over us, and I'm hoping that that's going to change, because this is going to affect your children and your grandchildren. Is this really what you want for them, what we are living through at this time? Because we can stop it, but only if we all stand up for our constitutional rights, one of which being paper ballots with IDs. You need an ID to buy a beer. At my age, it's a compliment, but you need an ID to buy a beer. Why do we not have IDs to vote? We need IDs to vote, and we need paper ballots. This is nothing against our elections office. I think the folks in there are amazing. Anytime I have anything to do with them, I always leave with a smile, because they're always professional at all times. But we are at that point. And I had, New California State's going to happen, you guys. We follow the West Virginia model. The West Virginia model worked. We're so close, I can smell it. There's so much happening. It's all positive. It's all good. And do you know what we really believe in? Constitutional rights, county sovereignty. It's a powerful words that we have all forgotten about, and people's ability to live their lives without government overreach. And that is what's going to happen. So please read this. This is racketeering. It's all legalese, bores me to tears. You guys can read it and you'll know what it's talking about. You should be aware. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any other in the room public comment for any items not on the agenda? Yes, come on up, Chief.
So now I feel like a complete idiot for what just happened there. I watched you two and I realized I was out of line in the right spot to talk. I'm so sorry. I don't come to many meetings, and I just wanted to say again, I was not trying to take away from that. I just misunderstood. When I heard public comments, it's my time. But again, just one more time, I can't tell you how important our police officers are to us, but more importantly, from what I saw, I was there in the beginning, I was there in the middle, I was there at the end. We came back multiple times to help the SOs. And as I told Dick Brown, he's our fire chaplain. He's an amazing man. He's been here for 40 plus years. And it isn't during the event, and I've experienced this myself with the earthquake and the firestorm in the Bay Area. It isn't with a lot of life loss. It isn't that day because you're full of adrenaline as a police officer. It's a couple days later when it kind of processes. And luckily for that event, as tragic and dramatic as it was, the community supported it. Any of you had a chance, and some of you probably have, if you were able to see the video that was on the Valley Springs Bulletin, and you know how Facebook is, once they see anything that's going to be controversial, they pull it down. But a picture's worth 1,000 words. And the amount of rounds that went off, that man, as he was firing back, I was back on the back, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was something up here in a rural community that we don't expect. But I do work with the sheriff, and we've done one active shooter drill, and that was on the 49 corridor. And we're gonna this spring or probably winter, depending on how I'm doing, but we're gonna do another one for the 26 corridor. But the relationships with the fire districts and the sheriff is top notch. And I just feel lucky, and I just want to say thank you again, even though I kind of screwed that up in the beginning. I'm sorry.
Great.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments for any items not on the agenda? No? Okay, we'll move on to consent agenda. Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion. At this time, are there any board members that wishes to pull an item from consent? Not seeing any. Are there any staff members? I'm gonna start with Zoom. Are there any public comment on Zoom for consent?
There are no online public comments.
Is there anyone in the room for consent agenda item? Any public comment? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda item?
I'll move this item, Madam Chair.
Moved by Vice Chair, is there a second? Second by Supervisor Callaway, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, 5-0. Thank you.
Ms. Callaway, can you pass my glasses I left down there? My apologies.
No, we don't want you to see today. Would you like us to read the agenda again?
I see now.
I didn't know that. I had to read Proclamation.
Okay. Okay, moving on to the regular agenda. Next up is regular agenda item number 22. If the clerk could please read out, and then I believe we need to have Mr. Elliott come to the table as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Item 22, ordinance planning. 1, conduct a public hearing. 2, adopt negative declaration 2021-055. 3, find the proposed project to be a later activity within the scope of the October 22, 2019 cannabis program EIR. 4, approve zoning amendment 2021-055 to change the zoning designation of a 41-acre parcel from RA20 residential agricultural 20-acre minimum to A1 general agricultural 20-acre minimum for the Whiskey Sides Farms LLC. And 5, authorize summary publication and pre-property description.
Okay. So before we get started, I want to go over how this process will work. So I'm going to turn it over to County Council, just so everyone's on the same page here.
Okay, so this is a public hearing, but it's not an appeal hearing. So pursuant to the board's rules of procedure, we'll open the public hearing, have a staff presentation, and then anyone who wants to speak can have 3 minutes per person. The board obviously can ask questions of staff, and staff can add anything they want, and then we'll close the public hearing before the board votes.
Thank you. We're going to give Mr. Elliott here a couple minutes to get set up. Are you ready? Okay, make sure you push the button for the light. Is it working? There we go. Okay, perfect. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Board of Supervisors.
To do open the public hearing before he starts. Okay, so at this time, if you're ready to go?
I'm ready.
Okay, so we're opening the public hearing now.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Board of Supervisors. On September 8th, the Planning Commission reviewed zoning amendment 2021-055, which was a request from Whiskey Slide Farms to amend the zoning of their property. The subject parcels are located at 15369, 15499, and 15469 Jesus Maria Road in Moke Hill. Now, these three parcels had been previously merged. So at the time the slide was being put together, the merging process was taking place. So now this is actually one parcel now. However, no parcel number has been identified, has been given, because it takes a while for parcel numbers to be given. Again, the request was to change zoning designation of an approximately 41-acre parcel from residential agriculture to general agriculture for cannabis cultivation. This particular view shows the location, an aerial view of the project site. As I mentioned earlier, two of the original parcels are currently being developed for an outdoor commercial cannabis cultivation under our County Code 1795. This is the code that actually allows for cannabis cultivation in our county. One cultivation permit for 1 acre of parcel has been conditionally approved by the county for that particular site. This slide shows the existing grow area, and the significance of this particular slide has to do with the controversy that actually happened at the Planning Commission meeting. The discussions kind of narrowed down to odor impacts and traffic impacts. And as the board will remember, those two impacts were actually had a statement of overriding considerations when the cannabis EIR was adopted by the county. This particular slide shows the existing canopy area where the existing canopy is, and next to it is where the new canopy would be, where the new canopy would be planted, when a new cannabis would be planted next to the adjacent canopy. Just kind of a description of the differences between the RA20 and the A120. The RA20 puts equal emphasis on residential and agricultural uses. And that particular zoning designation is designed to provide lands for small scale and personal scale farming and ranching, as well as for larger residential parcels. The A1 zone, on the other hand, is the main resource production zone. So general farming and ranching practices are primary emphasis. Residential uses are placed in secondary position to commercial scale production of food and fiber. At the Planning Commission meeting, 2 letters from a law firm and 1 letter from an adjacent property owner were received in opposition to the project. The opposition letters focused on CEQA and the argument that a negative declaration was not sufficient and they wanted an EIR. Another letter claimed that historical artifacts were removed from the site by the applicant. We have done some research since and obtained certain information, and that statement is not supported by a letter we received from a company called In Context, and they do this kind of research. There were numerous letters of support. I think there are about 14 or more in support of the project. At the Planning Commission meeting, as I mentioned earlier, the focus now changed to the use of pesticides on the cannabis plants, which affected adjacent property owners, and also odor impacts were raised at the Planning Commission level, and also the issue of traffic. Now that there are 2 cultivation sites, the concern was, is there going to be more traffic going in and out of the property? This particular slide shows the location of the property in blue and the distance and the location of the adjacent off-site residential properties. So to the south, you have Cody and Christian Cable. To the southeast, you have the Catos. To the west, you have the Catos. And these were primarily the families that were in opposition to this project. So we measured the distances from the property line to the nearest residential structure. And to the west, we measured 152 feet. That is from the property line. From the grow area itself, the distance was about 800 feet. To the south, from the property line to the south, it was about 50 feet. But from the grow area, that distance is significantly higher. I think this is a duplicate of one of the slides. This particular slide is what I was referring to, that actually measured the distance from the canopy area to the residentially zoned property. There seems to be sufficient, more than sufficient separation between the existing and proposed grow area and residentially zoned properties. In doing our environmental determination, we found that the proposed rezone is within the scope of the program EIR, an addendum prepared for Chapter 1795, which regulated commercial cannabis in the county. Staff prepared initial study and a negative deck, and which addressed the cannabis-related impacts that were not addressed in the EIR. We also prepared the negative deck to analyze potential impacts that could result from other non-cannabis uses permitted in the zoning designation. One of the concerns that was raised was by allowing this rezone, other uses or any of those uses that may be allowed in that specific category of the zone could take place on the property. That is quite an unusual way to address CEQA. When we talk about CEQA, we talk about a specific use and we describe it under a project description. So we went out of our way because we knew that this was somewhat controversial to address some of the potential impacts that may occur should this zoning code zone change take effect. Further findings, project was processed consistent with CEQA, California Resource Code 21,000. The proposed zoning amendment is a later activity within the scope of the programmatic EIR and addendum certified on October 22, 2019 to approve the cannabis regulatory program codified as Chapter 1795. The zoning amendment is consistent with land use map and applicable policies of the county's general plan and the standards of the Calaveras County zoning code. We also found that the proposed zoning amendment is consistent with neighboring and adjacent land uses and zoning. I think the next slide has since been modified, and it includes some of the recommendations that are in the staff report. There are 5 recommendations in total, and that would be the recommendation of staff to the Board of Supervisors. And this ends my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Gabriel. Mr. Stopper.
This all, I'm just, looking at these maps. I guess we'll let everyone go through their process, but I have questions about positioning and what's on there. We know a lot of these plotted lines aren't necessarily coincided, especially with these aerials, exactly where the property line is.
They're pretty close. They're very, I would say they're more reliable than not.
Okay.
Are there any board questions for staff?
I do have a question. When we did this ordinance, I thought we had a 200-foot setback from property line from the grow area. And had to be 200-foot back from any other property line. Is that the case?
Oh, yes, actually, that is the case. And I think that setback is actually met here. Now, what you're looking at is just property line to property line, from grow area to residential, to adjacent residential property line, or grow area to the project site's property line satisfies that minimum setback.
75.
It's 75 feet.
75 feet.
75
Yeah,
feet,
200
200
feet,
from the residence.
not 200.
So
grow
okay.
site to, on-site to property line is 75 feet. And once that distance is met, the grow site is considered to be consistent with the ordinance. In this particular case, some of the distances that you saw on the maps were actually from property line to adjacent residential properties. So from
Correct.
grow sites to residential properties is actually significantly higher. I think they're about 700 to 800
feet.
Right.
836 and 811.
Right.
But my concern was on the aerial map that you were saying was pretty accurate, this one.
Yes.
It shows the grow right up against the property line. It doesn't look like a 75-foot barrier there.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, accurate, but not to scale. So you're looking at a picture of what that site looks like from an aerial perspective. But if you scale that particular diagram, it would be more than 75.
It'd be 75 feet.
Absolutely.
And then this page is a little confusing on this. I'm assuming the lined area is the grow.
On that particular page.
That's the very first map that you. Very first. Which should have been your first slide.
No, I think what the clerk was clarifying, that's not Mr. Elliott's presentation. That's a printout from, I believe from the
Right, that's
applicant.
it.
Yeah.
That's
All
the
right, okay,
presentation.
thank you.
Now, Supervisor Toffenelli, the issue at the planning commission level was not necessarily proximity, but it was basically direction of wind. So regardless of how far the grow site may be, depending on the direction of wind, some of the adjacent property owners indicated that they could smell, the cannabis plant at different times of the day. So that was the issue. To counter that, I would refer the board, and I did refer the planning commission to the environmental impact report that was prepared for cannabis grow back in 2019, where we did a statement of overriding considerations for such impacts as odor and traffic. So, and there were a few discussions regarding whether or not we actually anticipated consolidation of grow sites on these types of facilities, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other board questions? Okay, I was going to allow the two parties to their 3 minutes to speak. If there aren't any other questions at this time? No? Okay. So I'll start with Zoom. Is that okay? So for those of you that are on Zoom, there's 3 minutes. I will be having the clerk assist me with the time. So if it's not my voice, it may be the clerk's voice to let you know that your time is up. So at this time, is there any Zoom comment?
Yes, I have Thomas Swipe.
Okay.
Thomas?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Excellent. Well, members of the board, I appreciate the opportunity to comment. My name is Tom Sweat and I represent the Catos. You'll see in your board packet some of the objections that we've raised to this project, some of which are contained in letters I've written to the board. I won't reiterate them here, but we do stand upon those objections. I want to make it clear, and sometimes it's lost in the confusion. No, Calaveras has an ordinance that has as of right cannabis cultivation in it. That's not what's before the board today. This is completely a discretionary decision that the board faces. And I would submit that you should deny the rezone application because this just isn't a good spot for what's being proposed. You have a situation where you've taken 3 residential parcels, merged them together, and created a more intense cannabis cultivation activity that's surrounded by residents that are going to be impacted by it. One of the primary ways of impact, just apart from the activities and the odor, you have commercial traffic that's basically going to be running through Kyle Cato's property from the south. There's only a small 20-foot wide easement there that was established for residential use only. And it's not just 2 acres of cannabis cultivation that are at issue, but there's also processing facilities that are there. There's going to be a significant amount of traffic. There's no way they can legally build a commercial access road to get there. And that's just indicative of the impacts that are going to be foisted upon the people who live around this particular project. It's also important to know or to realize that what is before you is an application for a rezone only. That's it. There's a lot of talk about how we know exactly how it's going to be used and there's a specific project, but it's not a use permit application. This is an application for a rezone of specific property to general agriculture. And as a result of that, there is no limitation on what that property can be used for as long as consistent with the zoning. So even though it's being represented to you today that it will be a 2-acre cannabis cultivation site, there's nothing to stop the owner of that property or a future owner of that property from engaging in any of the as of right activities that come with the general agricultural zone. And finally, I'd submit to you that the staff is representing that this particular situation was analyzed in prior EIR and its addendum for the cannabis program, and it simply is not. Read the documents. Never in that analysis did anybody contemplate that parcels that were not eligible for this intensity of cannabis cultivation could be merged together and then rezoned.
Thomas, I'm sorry, that is your time.
Okay. And so as a result, to conclude,
Thank you.
I just concluded.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comments online?
Yes, Sarah Cato.
Again, it's 3 minutes and the clerk will be letting you know when your time is up.
Hi, thank you so very much for hearing us out regarding this specific application. Again, we wanted to reiterate the fact that we were, as neighbors that surround this parcel on all sides, not notified of this permit application, and nor the second phase of the 2-acre grow, but the initial 1-acre grow. The neighbor was misleading in his initial intentions with it. And we did try to live in Amador after the Butte fire. So this is really a slap in the face from Calaveras when we chose to come back home. And it's pretty disappointing that this has been our home for so long, for many generations, and to see that I understand that cannabis is really important. After the Butte fire, Calaveras really needed to reinvest and find alternative means of revenue. But is this really the best for our county. So with, I really appreciate you guys implementing a cannabis badge clearance authorization. We did have an individual that was stopped on that easement that Mr. Sweat had mentioned regarding Kyle Cato's property. That was an employee of the Whiskey Slide Farms, and he is not located on this cannabis clearance badge list. And so we asked him to leave, and he did not leave when requested. And it took my brother coming out to ask him to leave because he was unescorted, and he had notified Gary because he was just loitering and waiting on the property. So again, the easement is a residential easement that was intended for the residents that was on this previous parcel. And we knew them. I mean, we used to know them. This is not the intention of the easement. And you guys even filed, you know, for the main Ponderosa address. So there is access to these parcels basis that they are the consistent owners. So if you guys do end up approving this, we ask that you guys at least keep it to your R1 or your, you know, not residential ag access, but it's actually accessible via the adjacent parcels of which they're the same owners.
Thank you. Are there any other online comments, public comments?
There are no further online comments.
Okay. With seeing no other online comments, I am going to move it into the room. So at this time, are there any in the room public comments? And again, please be mindful of the light, and it is 3 minutes.
Chair Fullendorf, members of the board, good morning and thank you for the opportunity to be heard. My name is Zach Trevon, an attorney before you on behalf of the applicant Whiskey Slide Farms LLC. I'd like to first briefly thank staff for all the work that they've put into the staff report, as well as for their recommendation of approval along with the planning commissions in recognition that this project does meet all criteria for approval. With that, I'd note that this property has been in the process of rehabilitation from the Butte fire since about 2019. The existing cannabis garden site is a repurposed terraced hillside that was formerly used as a vineyard. And with that, I'd like to kind of orient you to the layout. Taking a look at this exhibit here, you have the subject newly created merged parcel in the center highlighted in yellow. And then the upper northeastern corner of the parcel, you have the existing garden site. Now the hash area is where the existing canopy is currently planted. And I would note that that is 811 feet far from the residence to the west and 836 feet from the parcel to the south. As well, to your question, Supervisor Tofinelli, you'll see a little green sliver on the eastern side of the garden area. That represents the 75-foot setback that is currently in place. So we do meet all the county criteria for our existing permit. This is currently planted and permitted with a 1 acre permit. And I would also like to call your attention to the existing approved county site plan. You see that the grow area is highlighted here. This is a kind of a blow up of the existing infrastructure in place. And most importantly here, with this rezone, the co-location of a 2nd acre of canopy, there will obviously be no new use since we are already cultivating cannabis on site. But I think most importantly, no physical expansion of the existing infrastructure. And with that, I drive home a few high-level points, which would also be the rezone renders this parcel consistent with 647 acres of adjacent land and 6 out of 7 contiguous parcels surrounding this site. As well, we have been inspected by multiple state and local agencies, and we have demonstrated full regulatory compliance. To some of the points that the opponents made, I would say that legal access to the parcel was proven. It was validated by Public Works through the lot line adjustment. And I would say as it relates to traffic, we're not bringing semis through this road. Usually distribution comes via Sprinter vans. And so any additional impacts resulting from the ultimate co-location of a 2nd acre of canopy is going to be negligible in light of the current existing use. And as far as CEQA is concerned, The EIR did cover cannabis cultivation in both RA and A1 zones. Our mitigated negative declaration, our environmental study goes even further to analyze the proposed use and any potential uses as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other in the room public comment? None? Okay, seeing none, we'll move it back to the board. Does the board have any further questions? Supervisor Callaway.
It was mentioned that the easement, recorded easement, was a residential easement versus residential or commercial. I didn't know there's a difference.
Supervisor Callaway, the existing easement is not specified. There are no such restrictions placed on the use of that roadway for strictly residential purposes, nor does it designate that it is to be, exclusively commercial. It's for general purposes.
Okay, thank you.
Does staff want to? Okay, so your light went on, so I wanted to make sure I didn't miss you. Okay. Yes.
Ms. Cato said that they were not notified. I mean, I have that issue up in Arnold at the moment on a cannabis issue. Is that normally if they were notified and they didn't receive it, it comes back? Were they notified or not?
Supervisor Callaway, the way the cannabis ordinance was written, the first grow site is actually allowed by right. So,
Right.
so it's, yeah, and that's basically how it is that we, and that's how the ordinance was written.
But this is a rezone.
This is a rezone,
Not
yes. So they would have
cannabis
gotten, they would have gotten
They would
a
have gotten
notice,
something.
public notice for a rezone.
So-
And that's how they got to be involved in the process, because there was a notice that was sent to them, which I assume they received, and then they hired an attorney and so on and so forth.
Okay, so at some point they were
Yes,
notified.
yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mhm. Are there any other board comments or questions?
I do have a couple questions. I'm going back to this map and I didn't realize it wasn't given to us by Gabriel. It was actually the proponent that wants to, I'm going back to this map that you mentioned and you held up. The shaded area that you have lined, you said was the grow area, the current grow area?
Correct. It's located on the western half of the garden area.
And there's just above it's 235 acres, A1 zone.
Correct.
Did they own that property also?
Yeah, Whiskey Slide Ranch LP owns that property. Mr. Shermer is a member of that company. And yes, so there's common ownership between the applicant entity operating cannabis site as well as the adjacent property owner.
So they own the treatment plant that's just above this that I'm looking at. I'm assuming it's a treatment plant. If I'm looking at,
It's a pond.
it's a pond,
It's a
but it looks
holding
like
pond.
there's a plant. I don't know what's going on there, but that's a pond, a couple of ponds, but there's something
Yeah.
just to, and I was assuming it was some type of treatment plant or something.
No, sir. So this is a little bit of an older satellite image. This is the one that's currently available on the County Geographic Information System. And so I would note that these measurements as well were met using the county's own tool. Those bodies of water are ponds, and they're used right now for livestock grazing and just domestic purposes. If you're looking at, I think you may be looking at a rectangular area just to the north of the property line.
Yeah.
That's an existing residential garden.
All right. And I'm looking at this map that was provided by us, the Gabriel, and even your map. The easement road in question is the road going right through this property by the home and up to the grow site. That's the easement that's in question that we were talking about.
That is correct. It provides access via Jesus Maria.
All right, thank you.
Supervisor Stopper?
Just a question, would that 235 acres being of A1 being owned by the same owner, is there access to that property via Ponderosa Way also?
Yes.
Good question.
Well, it's, it just, you know, this is kind of out of the context of what we're deciding here today. But, you know, later on, when the board makes a vote one way or the other, consideration of your neighbors in the future and possibly taking another route. So you're not hitting that easement as much if you find another viable access. Just, you know, just a suggestion.
Supervisor Stopper, I do appreciate that. We are conscientious of the concerns of our neighbors and certainly their complaints, and we have been responsive to all of those. And so has the county. They have responded to those complaints, come out to the site, confirm regulatory compliance. I would add that the property to the south owned by Kyle Cato was purchased after we had established our first cannabis permit. In fact, I'll go even further to say that they inquired with the owners of the company as to whether or not we'd be interested in renting the residents on site for some of our laborers. So I'll leave it at that, and I appreciate the commentary.
No problem. It's not part of what we're deciding here, just a suggestion.
Gabriel, do you have anything? I want to make sure staff is having the input. I appreciate each individual, and I will get to Zoom in a minute. I do see that there's a hand up, but I just want to make sure staff has the opportunity to answer some of the questions that were just asked.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. If any of you have any specific questions for me, I will be more than happy to answer them. The deliberations at the Planning Commission level have been identified in the staff report. As I mentioned earlier, you know, the issue of the odor and the traffic were pretty much paramount. In my perspective, since we have an EIR that has already exempted those two categories with a statement of overriding considerations, it becomes, we would have to relitigate, you know, our own EIR in order to be able to address these issues more specifically. Whether or not the odor impacts are seasonal was one of those discussions that came up. There are certain times where, you know, the odor is strong, and there's certain times when it's not. It depends on whether or not the plants are flowering or not flowering, et cetera, et cetera. So it's basically just wind carrying odor to adjacent properties.
Thank you. Gay, do you have more questions? Okay. So since we had the opportunity to allow the applicant's attorney to answer some of the questions at the board, I want to turn it over to Mr. Sweat to give him that opportunity as well, but please be mindful and keep it to the point if you can. Mr. Sweat?
I can, thank you. I will keep it within the scope. As to the easement itself was historically granted when there was a residence out there. I believe the grant was in the 50s. As a matter of law, where there's a lack of specificity in the easement, it's limited by the uses that were in place at the time the easement was created. There's no commercial use that was ever contemplated by the original grantors. Again, it's only 20 feet wide, and county code requires for a commercial use, I believe, 50 or 60 foot easement and a 30 or 40 foot road. So, and I apologize for not reviewing those standards before today's hearing, but I do know with certainty that your commercial road standards far exceed 20 feet, and that is the width of the easement, no matter what its scope of use.
Thank you. Is there any other online public comment
Ms.
on that? Okay,
May I
so
please
we'll
make
move
a
it back
Oh,
to the.
sorry, Chair Fullendorf. I think Ms. Muslish just
Oh,
wanted to add
I'm
something
sorry,
briefly. No, it's okay.
Julie. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to clarify one thing. I know there's been talk about significant and
unavoidable impacts and overriding considerations. And I think the CEQA issue on that front before you is whether by approving this one additional acre, those significant and unavoidable odor and traffic impacts would be significantly worsened across the county, because the project was the entire county being considered for cannabis cultivation. I think that the CEQA issue is whether by adding this, whether or not that would worsen those impacts, considering the entire scope of the ordinance.
Thank you, Julie. Are there any board questions after the comments from Mr. Sweat? None? Okay.
There, I was just saying, unless staff has anything else, you can close the public hearing and then the board can deliberate and vote.
Okay. Then at this point, the applicant and the opposition have no other comments. We're going to move it back to public comment. Close the public hearing and bring it to the board for a decision.
And there's no further public comment online, Madam Clerk?
There's general public comment. Yes.
There is? Oh, okay.
Sorry. Okay, go. Thank you. I forgot. Is there any? Okay, there's one more.
Jennifer?
I'm gonna reserve my comment. Thank you.
Okay. So there's none online and none in the room. We'll bring, again, staff, Gabriel, do you have anything else?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. With that, we will be closing the public hearing. Jack?
Back, hearing's closed.
Yeah, hearing closed.
Make a motion to adopt negative declaration and all the items on here, adopt a negative declaration, find the proposed project with later activity, and approve the zoning amendment.
And here's a motion.
Second.
Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Pass it 4-1. Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Clerk, if you could please read out the agenda item, which is item number 23.
Item 23, action item, Public Works. 1, introduce amendments to the county storm water quality ordinance. 2, waive the first reading of an ordinance. And 3, authorize the Department of Public Works to publish a summary of the changes made to the storm water quality ordinance for public review.
Okay. So I did not allow staff to switch, so we're gonna let staff switch here for a second. Are you doing a presentation or just talking at the podium? Talking at the podium. Do you need to use? Do you need to go to the back? Okay, we're gonna take a 5-minute break for a second, please. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. Oh, okay, thank you for everyone patient. Next, we have a regular agenda item number 23, and I will have the clerk read out, please.
Item number 23 is an action item from Public Works. Number 1, introduce amendments to the county storm water quality ordinance. Number 2, waive the first reading of the ordinance. And number 3, authorize the Department of Public Works to publish a summary of the changes made to the storm water quality ordinance for public review.
Thank you. Mr. Packinger, good morning.
Good morning. Title 13, Chapter 13 of our county code is the stormwater ordinance. We are supposed to have this stormwater ordinance in place as part of the requirements of the state water quality control boards, municipals, MS4 requirements. And so every now and then we get additional requirements from the state. Most of the time, we are okay with our stormwater ordinance, but every now and then we have to update that stormwater ordinance to stay in compliance with the requirements from the state. In this case, we have a pyrethroid requirements that we must add. Pyrethroids are pesticides. And as long as we're doing that, we're also doing a little bit of cleanup to the ordinance. The last page here that we have a sheet, it's a small sheet showing what the changes are. Most of the ordinance is left untouched. There are a few minor changes to it. Thank you.
Are there any questions for staff? Ben?
Go ahead and proceed with public comment and bring it back to the board if you want.
Okay. Are there any public comments online?
There are no public comments online.
Are there any public comment in the room? Seeing none, bring it back to the board. Are there any board member questions or comments?
Let's see, let me get to the right page. I completely hear you on keeping up with the state. Couple small things. Packet, it would be my packet page 634. C3 of 13.01.060. It goes here, well, let me start out with C. Parties responsible for runoff in excess of incidental runoff shall implement the following measures. I'll forego 1 and 2, but 3, not irrigate during precipitation events. And this is with C, that's binding, as it says, runoff shall implement the following measures. So it's a shall, not a may. So with that, I would suggest in number 3, with the exceptions of D, because that's holding you back from the owners of ponds containing recycled water shall ensure that no discharge occurs unless the discharge is a result of a 25-year, 24-hour storm event or greater, and the appropriate regional water board is notified by email no later than 24 hours after the discharge. So I would say number 3 should say not irrigate during precipitation events with the exception of D. In the sense that a lot of these owners of ponds containing recycled water do their discharge via recycling. So in the event that a 100-year, 25-year storm, 24-hour storm event happens, at that point, their only possible way of doing it is getting permission through the State Water Resources Control Board, the Water Quality Control Board, to do a discharge so that their dams don't overflow. And we won't want to bind that to not having them be able to irrigate it if the state decides that's the appropriate thing to do in case of those type of emergencies.
Yes, sir.
That's it's a minimal thing, but it kind of seems like C. Maybe I'm wrong, Sarah, council, but it seems like C's holding you back from doing D. So with the exception of D put in there, I understand why it's in there. We shouldn't be going during a precipitation event unless it's going to make the dam blow out. And then we should darn well get the water out of there before it floods houses.
The way that I read this, Supervisor Stopper, I agree with what you're saying and what Mr. Packinger is saying. And I think that D does read as sort of an exception to C3.
Okay.
Perhaps just a way that we can add something to D that says to include other measures that need to occur in order for the ponds or the dams to be safe.
It was kind of a gray area to me. Just for even C3, not irrigate during precipitations event, except for when it applies is in D.
Okay, so the concern is that what's described in D, which is permissible if you follow those steps, could be interpreted as irrigation, and therefore, so maybe Mr. Packinger, what we could do is start D off by saying something like, notwithstanding C3, comma, owners of ponds containing do. Okay.
Just don't want to have us conflicting with ourselves throughout.
Sure.
That's lawyer talk. Right.
It is. I apologize for the notwithstanding.
That's why she's the educated one over there. I'm just bringing up a point. Let's see, page 630. 30.01.020 administrative authority. A, this chapter of Calaveras County Code shall be enforced by the director of the Calaveras County Department of Public Works or his/her designee. The director may delegate his or her responsibilities to enforce this chapter to a code enforcement officer or other designee, either individually or collectively. My thing with this is there's consistently a lot of things in here the director shall determine, so there's a certain amount of authority with that. And a lot of times when we're going through projects and everything moving forward, whether it be a public entity or a developer, there are issues that are addressed moving forward through the engineering of the company. So at this point, is there discretion here at the point where, well, my concern is if you were to pass this off to another person who isn't necessarily an engineer, and the engineer has provided a mitigatable circumstance to a event, how do we go through that process, Robert? I mean, I would prefer this be delegated to someone with an engineering degree and everything, so that that they could go through everything and they have the education on how it applies within state law and be able to make a discretionary call on certain mitigatable circumstances.
Right. What the routine of how we handle that type of situation is, if I'm not checking it myself, we have consultants on board that are engineers that would check it. Check the hydrology, hydraulics studies that go with these projects to make sure that they are, that they work. So if there is an issue with those, there is an engineer in the background that is checking that. The inspector is communicating most likely what's going on with the client, with the developer. He'll do the communication, but the actual work when it comes to engineering checking comes either to an engineer that's a consultant or myself.
And I think what this subsection does, Supervisor Stopper, is would allow that if there were an issue, if, you know, Robert or the consultant determined that there were an issue, it preserves the county's ability to have code enforcement, say, write a citation if that were necessary.
Right. In this, it would be your in-house inspector as opposed to code enforcement.
There is within the chapter an escalating feature so that we start with our inspector. If our inspector can't get compliance, it moves on to code enforcement.
Okay, thank you. I'm fine with that. Just the one, I only have the one recommendation on change. I don't really see much problems with anything else in here personally.
Any other board questions or comments? Not seeing any. Okay, one more time for public comment. Is there any Zoom public comment?
There is no public comment.
Okay, any in the room? Seeing none, okay. If there's no more board or staff comments, is there a motion to approve the recommendation by staff with the minor edit that Supervisor Stopper commented on?
What she said.
Just
So
so it's clear for the record, then I think the recommended edit to what's been presented would be that section 13.01.060 began by stating notwithstanding C3, comma, owners of ponds containing, and then would just go on as drafted.
Minor. I don't know if I did anything there, but you know, thank you.
I think it can add clarity.
So that's your motion.
That's my motion.
Okay, we got a second by Chair. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? 5-0. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Next, we have agenda item number 24. If the clerk could please read out.
Item number 24 is an informational item department from the Agriculture Department. Receive a presentation on Calaveras County's 2021 agricultural crop and livestock report.
We actually have a PowerPoint, so.
Yes, come on in.
Come on in for a spell.
I think maybe we should take a brief break so that staff can set up their
It's taking
presentation.
longer. Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
5-minute break.
Okay, thank you and welcome back. I'll turn it over to Jesse Fowler for presentation.
Good morning, Madam Chair, honorable members of the board. Jesse Fowler, Agricultural Commissioner and Director of Weights and Measures. I've brought with me Pauline Montemayor. She actually compiled and designed the crop report as well as presentation. So if you guys have any in-depth questions, I brought her just in case, plus she's my unofficial IT. All right, so let me go ahead and get this guy started. In accordance with section 2279 of the California Food and Agricultural Code, I respectfully submit the 2021 Calaveras County Crop Report. The gross crop value for the county of Calaveras was $18,648,864, representing a 14.4% decrease from 2020 values. This year, livestock held the top two positions for the highest grossing commodities. Cattle was in the leading commodity in Calaveras County with a number of $7,988,500 and a 4.3% value increase from 2020. Poultry dethroned last year's timber as the second highest grossing commodity. Poultry, valued at $2,788,310, had a 3.1% increase in value compared to last year, whereas timber had a 41% decrease with this value of $2,345,349. For livestock values overall, this year saw a 4.6% increase from 2020. In recent years, the ongoing drought and increased wildfires have become a consistent plague to California, in which Calaveras is no exception. Combined with the shortage of farm labor contractor labor, it is unsurprising that the resulting impacts were felt in the agricultural operations across the county. Various crops decreased in both supply and value throughout 2021, with values decreasing between 22 and 49%. In 2021, wine grapes had a 40.9% decrease in value from 2020. The effects of wildfire smoke created significant issues for the winemaking industry in the form of smoke taint, a change to grape characteristics that give affected wine an undesirable smoky taste. Because of this, some wine grapes were not harvested due to the risk of smoke taint. In other instances, wines made with smoke tainted grapes were inevitably disposed of. Monetary values in this report are based on freight on board prices at shipping and do not reflect the net returns or profits made by growers. We are grateful for the ongoing work by the agricultural industry in providing food to our communities and recognize its perseverance throughout this ever-changing landscape. I wish to express my gratitude to those who provided the necessary information and data used in this crop report. I also want to thank my staff for their hard work in making this report possible. So I'm going to go through and just kind of go over some of the highlights, just give you an overall, and then if you guys have any questions. So this is just a little bit more in depth on the top three commodities seen in 2021. So number one was cattle. In this one, it went from $20,656,000 to, $7,656,000 to $7,988,500. So a very small decrease, or excuse me, increase. And that increase was actually because even though we had ongoing drought issues, there were a lot more cattle actually sold. So that's what actually bumped it up the 4.3%. And even though that we did have some lower prices for cattle, but again, there's just so many people selling because they didn't have the pasture land and rangeland for cattle. So that takes us over to poultry. So poultry actually for the first time has overtaken other commodities, become the second highest value crop for 2021. And that's because there were more birds sold and more value per bird, which pushed up the overall price. So just supply and demand pushed that up. So timber, timber had a huge decrease in value, which again, isn't really surprising because there were so many fires in the area. So because of this in 2021, the efforts were concentrated in other counties where there were actual fire burn scars so they could attempt to salvage those burned logs and get them to market. So there was very little timber that was actually harvested in Calaveras. So livestock, just to kind of cover some other livestock, it was of note that the price of sheep and lambs actually climbed 63%. The market was simply demanding more product when less was available. Therefore, again, supply and demand, the cost went up. And the same was actually found for livestock products like wool and mohair. So fruit and nut crops. So walnuts actually saw a significant and price and harvest decrease. So walnuts have been having some troubles lately in that there has been increasing competition from other markets like Chile, and they've been able to produce cheaper walnuts. Plus 2021 saw some difficulties with container shipments. So again, all those backups at the ports actually really affected walnuts and almonds. So that was another reason. Besides also, again, drought really, it impacts everything, just no water, nothing grows. So olives, however, conversely, they actually saw a large increase in yield and therefore overall value because it's alternating crops. So one year will be up, one will be down. So this was 2020 was actually an up year, quite a bit up. You can see it's 133% up, which is great. And then moving back to wine grapes. So as I mentioned in that opening letter, it was a really poor year for wine grapes. A lot of that fruit remained on the vine just because there was so much smoke in the area in 2021. And to kind of compound that, so farm labor, it was really, really difficult to come by and very expensive when you could find it. So that led to a lot of growers just deciding to forego that year's crop and leave it on the vine because it's not something it's easy as, oh, okay, well, this is smoke tainted or not. It's actually not seen until later in the fermentation process. So again, a lot of money has to go into it, which is why they decided just to forego the crop this year. So some other commodities, apiary. So again, drought is what's severely affecting the price here. So it actually came down 43.9% from last year. There are a lot of pollination contracts were also not available again because there weren't as many blooms. Nursery. So we had 2 local nurseries closed, so that impacted the numbers substantially. And kind of more of just a periphery thing, a lot more workers going back to in-office work. So there weren't as many people buying plants to beautify their homes, both inside and out. So that had an impact, albeit a small one. And then field crops, obviously, less water meant less crop. So that was down as well. So cannabis. So cannabis is actually not recognized as a food commodity on the federal level, but I did add this in here just to kind of give a snapshot of what's going on as a supplement to the crop report. And with licensing right there, you'll see that there are 6 commercial and 58 cultivation licenses. Obviously, that doesn't capture all the licenses that are held. That's actually capturing was actually used in 2021 to either produce or sell a crop. And these numbers were actually found using our internal Track It and CalAg permits licensing programs. And what that resulted in is the production. So value this year was a combination. The numbers, they came from, again, Track It, CalAg permits, California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, which is a sort of spinoff of Board of Equalization. And from that, we're able, and surveys as well. And from that, we're able to extrapolate production numbers for our county. So we had 102.2 acres in production, and it was estimated there were 50,131 pounds of flour and trim produced, which gave us a value of $10,989,353. As far as trends, so since this is our first year reporting this, at least in several years, we really didn't have a lot of numbers compared to, obviously, but there were a few growers who in their survey did say that they had some weather issues and that decreased their numbers. So I'm guessing we may see better numbers next year, but again, who knows, we might have worse drought. So next, I'm going to go into our department summary. So this is just giving an overview of what our department accomplished in 2021. This is Ag Department actually has several programs and the weights to measure side as well. And a lot of people don't actually know everything that we do and how we can serve them as a community. So Pest Exclusion, we did 41 nursery stock and shipments. Inspected them, and those came from glassy-winged sharpshooter infested areas. So glassy-winged sharpshooter is a pest that could be devastating to the wine grape industry, and it is also something that could affect just our regular residents as well, as they also like a lot of landscaping materials, and they can infect it with a disease that would cause decline of that plant. We inspected 282 parcels, and that is anything coming across our border, making sure that there aren't any pests on there that again could impact our commerce here, our agriculture here, making sure there's a certain level of cleanliness and certification there as needed for the material. Pest detection, we placed 613 insect traps, and that's for 9 particular insects that we don't have in this county to make sure that we continue not to have them in this county, because again, they can be very detrimental. And we serviced those traps 2,910 times. So direct marketing, we issued 3 certified farmers market certificates and 44 certified producer certificates, and just to make sure that the produce that you're buying as grown in Calaveras actually is. On the weights and measures side, we did 968 inspections on various weighing and measuring devices. So broken down, that is 272 weighing devices, which is generally scales, and 696 measuring devices, which would be like gas pumps or sub-meters. Of that, we did 26 follow-up inspections, meaning that we found that there was something out of tolerance. So we went back and made sure that it was all right, so that both the consumer and the business were getting their fair market value for that product. All right, it's the red screen, which means I'm at the end of my presentation. So again, I'd just like to thank the growers and ranchers who responded to our survey, and to also thank my staff again, especially Pauline here, for compiling data and designing the 2021 crop report. And both the crop report and that cannabis survey results, we're going to post them to our website later today. So if anybody's interested, they can just go to the Ag Department's website and get a copy. Otherwise, any questions?
Are there any questions from the board? Supervisor Callaway?
Okay.
Could you please explain again how you come up with these figures? Do you depend on the ranchers or farmers giving it to you, or?
Right.
What's that, how you get that value?
So both the crop report and the cannabis survey, what we do is we look for, first of all, our number one go-to is always going to be survey results. So we send out surveys to everybody in Calaveras County that has that particular crop or that rancher with that livestock. And we hope that they give us a return with information. We don't get 100% return, obviously. But what information we do get is invaluable and greatly appreciated. So with that, we couple that information with information that we get from like the USDA, their NASS site. So once every 5 years, they do their own sort of a crop report. So we'll compare with their numbers, their trends. Then we'll also reach out to some of the kind of leaders in the community who kind of have their finger on the pulse of where like prices especially are at, to get their input. And then we'll also look at some other areas like our own, we have our Cal Ag Permits program, which is if anybody is thinking of applying any sort of pesticides or as a part of the licensing for cannabis, they have to get an operator identification number through our county. So through that, we actually get the information on acreage. So we know for sure, like for the wine grape survey, that is what our acreage is, because that's what people have actually come in and told us when they got their permit beyond the actual survey. And then on Pauline also, we go off of some historic practices like going to the Board of Equalization to find like timber values, some of these sort of periphery or some of those cannabis numbers. So we basically take from a lot of different sources. Our number one fallback is always going to be those surveys, which is why we're so thankful when people turn them in. And again, reiterating, those are not part of the public records. You cannot do a public records request on those surveys. Even office, we can't share those actual individual surveys with other offices. So if anyone listening, your information is very confidential, so please turn it in. We really appreciate it. But hopefully that gives you an idea. We just of all the different sources we put together to try to get a big picture.
Okay. On timber, is that just private or private, federal, and state?
So those numbers are, we send out to everyone that we have contact information on, that would be private. But as far as it would be a lot of federal, because it is actual timber, like board feet that we're pulling when people get permits to actually harvest. So that's generally where that information comes from. And then did you happen to speak with anyone or you just go to the board?
So we spoke to Sierra Pacific Industries as well, and they give us a general trend of what's going on as far as timber harvest goes. So it was SPI, and we also went through CDTFA, the California Department of Tax.
Yeah, the fee and I
Administration.
had to write it down for a reason. It's basically the BOE, the Board of Equalization, but that's
But
their.
if it comes off of federal land or state land, they don't go through the Board of Equalization. Do they, or is it if, I don't want to make up, Tanner Logging has a contract to take timber off of federal land, then they go through, they pay into the Board of Equalization?
They should, because they should be paying a tax on whatever materials they're harvesting.
Okay, so that's included.
Yes.
But I mean, I guess what I'm really looking at is the timber report reflects federal, state, and private timberlands.
Yeah, we're doing the best we can to capture all agriculture in the county. And again, it's from what sources we have, obviously, you know, it's an extrapolation, so it's a best guess.
And on your measuring devices, that also includes grocery stores?
Yes, so anything that is commercially used to weigh or measure, so whether it's, you know, a deli scale or when you're checking out the scale they weigh your produce on, all of that gets checked on an annual basis by our staff to make sure that it's accurate.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, and also prices, I should mention that. So we're also, we take all the complaints, we have to do investigations. So if you're ever in a grocery store and the prices aren't as advertised, or any store for that matter, there's actually a truth in advertising code section that they have to sell at what they actually advertise it for.
Okay.
Thank you. Under your pest detection, did we find any new pests in the county that normally aren't here?
No, thank goodness.
No?
No, so we did a
That's good.
trap for a new pest that they've been finding in Southern California. It's called invasive shot hole borer, but we did not find any.
Good.
Jack.
Thank you. We don't get to see you often, so I'll just ask a question that's not directly related to your report. What can we as a Board of Supervisors be doing to further this industry in our county? What advice would you like to see on a policy level?
Oh, goodness, that's a big question. I probably have to think about that a little bit more. I know that you guys are very supportive of our agricultural industry, which is great. That's the biggest step right there. Yeah, that's actually something I think I would have to reach out to like Farm Bureau and like cattlemen's and ask them what, I mean, I'm always happy to offer whatever services I can, but yeah, I would definitely want to ask them, and I could get back to you on that.
Sometimes there's just things lumber in the road that we're not recognizing.
Right.
Perhaps you or working in this could give us advice on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Possibly bringing more processing into the county as opposed to shipping out our stuff to be processed would help the
Yeah.
agriculture industry.
Yeah, I know, especially with livestock, that would probably be good. I know they are working towards some of that smaller, but that's more of a.
Thought I would throw that out there.
Federal, yeah.
Marita.
Looking for
Do
the
you
red
think
lights.
cannabis should be an ag product in Calaveras County?
Oh, wow, put me on that. Well, cannabis is interesting because mattering on how you view it, it could be agriculture or it could not be agriculture. It's definitely been embraced like an agricultural product in this county, and we enforce it like an agricultural product in this county. So at this point, seems to me it's an agricultural product in this county.
So, not that I disagree, but in prior conversations I've had with Supervisor Garamendi is. Yeah, I know.
She puts
That's
me in the
what you
hot
get 'cause
seat.
You sit next to me. At some point, not today, but I think we as a board have not said it's an ag product, even though it's somewhat treated like one. I think it would be good to see what are the pros and cons of the board specifically saying it's an ag product. I mean,
Right.
I know grading is an issue, but there could be other advantages and disadvantages. Yes, Sarah's going, I wish she'd get off this topic, but I'm just thought I'd ask the question.
Well,
Was
it is
true?
recognized at a state level as an
Okay.
agricultural product. Federal's moving towards that. Again, but it's up to you guys, like for in particular, the Williamson Act, it's up to you guys if you would like to view it as an ag product or not. Completely your discretion.
That's another subject for another day. I was just curious and sure here. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Jesse, for the presentation, both of you, both the work that you guys have done on this. So if there's not any other comment by the board, seeing none, I think we're good unless you guys have any other comments. I didn't cut you off or anything. Okay.
I would like to say our ag commissioner is at many of the public events regarding agriculture, and it's always a pleasure to see you at them. Thank you for coming.
It's nice to be there.
Okay, with that, then we're gonna move on to supervisor announcements. Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. Is there any public comment? I'll start with Zoom.
There is no public comment.
Okay, and there's none, seeing none in the room. I still need to do it next. I'll move it back to, yeah,
I apologize. There is one public comment on here.
okay. Please, there's 3 minutes for public comment. And the clerk will stop you when your time's up.
Ms. Smith, you should be able to talk now.
Hi, good afternoon, almost good afternoon, board. Super excited to see cannabis presented today with the ag report. I know that it's a very interesting topic, and some counties are grabbing a hold of it and sharing this information when they do the ag report. So, and some are. I'm really glad to see us doing that. And the commissioner beat me to it. We are considered an ag product at the state level, and I will always advocate for that to be taken up at the local level as well. We do still fight for that ag commodity designation, but we are an actual ag product at the state level. And just really appreciate being included today and sharing this information with the public. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other public comment?
There is no other public
Okay,
comment.
and not seeing any in the room, we'll move on to supervisor announcements, and I'll start with Supervisor Stopper.
We have some good meetings coming up later this week. I probably won't be able to make my CSEDD meeting on Wednesday, precluding I have other meetings starting in the morning and then moving on to Hardwood Advisory Committee meeting. Hopefully we can wrap some stuff up and pass it on to the Planning Commission when it comes to our Oak Woodlands. Look forward to that on Thursday. And we've got a lot more coming, but I can announce that next Tuesday.
Vice Chair? Anything?
I have nothing to report, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Supervisor Garamendi?
Nothing required to report, Chair.
Supervisor Callaway?
Nothing to report.
The only thing I have to report was I attended the East Bay Mud with my fellow supervisors that were there, and that was a great event. So thank you. It's good to see everybody's faces again. And with that, the board will be convening into